Daniel Sports Central. We go over our next team prediction of this offseason, and it's going to be over the Florida St Seminoles, a team that is very much on the rise as we look forward to 2023. This team was 10-3 in 2022. They were a true contender in the ACC for the first time since, you could say, 2016. It has been a while since this team has been a legit contender, and it is safe to say this team is back. They've got high expectations heading into 2023, potentially even being a potential college football playoff contender once again. And considering the talent on this team and everything, it makes perfect sense for that to be the case. And we'll be talking about Florida State here today, analyzing this team and predicting their schedule game by game in this video. Let's get started with a quick recap of 2022. This team was 10-3 once again in 2022. Their only 3 losses came in October. So overall, this was a solid team in 2022. They were 4-0 to start the season, beat Duquesne 47-7 in week 0. They beat LSU. That was a huge win there. And you consider both teams heading into the season really did not have very high expectations. But turns out both LSU and Florida State were 2 of the top 15 teams in the country last season. So that was a huge win for Florida State, getting the win 24-23. They had their first bye week and then played Louisville on the road, got the win there, beat Boston College by 30, and then lost to Wake Forest. Wake Forest being a solid team, lost to them by 10, lost to NC State on the road by 2, lost to Clemson by 6. All 3 of their losses were within 10 points. This was a really good football team last season that could have been even better than 10-3 because, all 3 losses were close. They came back from their second bye, beat Georgia Tech 41-16, took care of Miami on the road 45-3, beat Syracuse then 38-3. Those 2 games, Miami and Syracuse were decent football teams in 2022, and Florida State made it look easy there. Then they beat Louisiana and beat Florida 45-38 to finish out the regular season, and then took on Oklahoma in the Cheez-It Bowl, got the win 35-32. What a huge turnaround season for Florida State. This team, you think back, they have won a national championship in the past decade. They won it in the 2013 season, and since then, this team was pretty good from 2014 to 2016. When Jimbo Fisher was still around. And then, of course, 2017 was kind of the turning point, and this team was down a bit after that. But 2022, once again, a huge turnaround, and this team very much has got a bright future as we look forward to 2023. Speaking of which, your roster preview heading into the season. Now you got Jordan Travis, who is coming back. He was outstanding in 2022, 3,200 yards, 24 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and a 64% completion rate. That is an outstanding stat line for a quarterback. And for Jordan Travis, still a younger quarterback, it shows tremendous upside in him, and it brings a lot of potential to this offense. Backfield looks great. Trey Benson coming back. Lawrence Toafili is also coming back. So, they both combined for over 1,900 yards in the 2022 season, 15 touchdowns. Keep an eye on them. That's going to be huge. You do lose Trayshawn Ward, your third running back, but I'm really not too concerned. Even Jordan Travis put up over 400 yards of rushing last season and 8 touchdowns just by himself. So backfield looks great. The receiving core, you do lose a couple here. Johnny Wilson's coming back, who was your top in the receiving core, nearly 900 yards. But you do lose your second, third, and fourth in receiving yards. Ontario Wilson, Micah Pittman, and then Cameron McDonald are all gone. So the receiving core does need to rebuild just a bit. That is one of my main concerns of this team, but they still got some good depth, so really it shouldn't be a huge issue. You do lose 2 on the offensive line, 1 linebacker, 1 in the secondary. So defensively, this team shows some tremendous potential, returning most of the key players from 2022. So defensively, this team is going to be experienced. The main concern is the receiving core. Losing a few in there, but with Jordan Travis coming back, the backfield, overall, this team has got solid returning production, and it brings up the question, is this team back? Are they a power in football once again? Time will tell on that one. You can't speak too soon on this. Florida State has been, has definitely not been a great team over the past 5 or 6 years. It was just 2022, which was an outstanding season, but based on how 2023 goes, this team could very well be a big, consistent contender like they just were 10 years ago or so. This team, it was them and Clemson in the ACC just a decade ago, just every year. And then this team fell off a bit. And I think this team, though, the way things look, they've got a bright future. And I would be very surprised if this team wasn't a big contender, at least for the next 3 or 4 years, just based on how the recruiting is as well. But, is this one of the main contenders for the college football playoff as well? I mean, if you look at the ACC here, you got Clemson, who should be improved in 2023. I see them being a big contender. Florida State, this team I really like. I mean, North Carolina should be a solid team. So I think your big three in the ACC heading into 2023 are Florida State, Clemson, and North Carolina. In particular, I think Clemson and Florida State are your top two. So, I mean, we'll see what this team is able to do. The schedule is challenging for this team, and I think week one is going to tell a lot about how the season is going to go for Florida State as they have to take on LSU, which much different story this time around. Both teams, in comparison to last year, I mean, both teams heading into that matchup this season are expected to be big contenders. Your transfer portal and recruiting now, Treshaun Ward, he is off to Kansas State. We mentioned him, the third running back on this team this past season. You bring in Jaheim Bell, and he's coming in from South Carolina. He's listed as a tight end on the depth chart, but he was a receiver with South Carolina. Malik McClain, he is off to Penn State. Keyshawn Helton is off to Cincinnati. So you're losing a couple of the receivers. Once again, the receiving core is one of my main concerns because of the players that are transferring out and being lost there. But Kyle Morlock, he's coming in from Shorter, a D2 school, where he was a big impact player, and mentioned Micah Pittman. He's in the transfer portal right now. You bring in offensive tackle Jeremiah Byers from UTEP, and then Casey Roddick is coming in, offensive lineman from Colorado. Otherwise, Keandre Jones is coming in, offensive lineman from Auburn. You bring in defensive lineman Braden Fiskey from Western Michigan. Gilbert Edmond is coming in, edge rusher from South Carolina. Expect him to have an immediate impact. Darrell Jackson is coming in from Miami. Jared Jackson is off to Michigan State, defensive lineman. Linebacker Amari Gaynor is off to North Carolina. And Sidney Williams, safety, is off to Missouri. Ventrell Cypress, can't forget about him, defensive back. He's coming in from Virginia. Expect him to be a key player as well. Recruiting-wise, this team is 19th in the country, 3rd in the ACC. Things look great recruiting-wise for the Seminoles. They got 8 4-stars coming in, 9 3-stars, top 20 in the country, 3rd in the ACC. And because of that, I've got this team at a 9 out of 10 on the future forecast meter. This is where I'll tell you guys whether or not I think a team has got a bright future. Maybe in the next 5-6 years, where will this team be? I see Florida State being a contender based on the recruiting. I think Mike Norvell is doing an outstanding job. He considered the turnaround that this team has had the past couple of seasons. I mean, 10-3, and this team could have been even better in 2022. We mentioned that with those close losses. I mean, this team is very much on the rise right now, and I think based on the recruiting, the talent, everything, this team has got a very bright future. But that said, let's look at the schedule now going into 2023. So you got LSU in week 1. That is a huge matchup. It's on a Sunday night. You remember last season's matchup, it was in a similar situation. Week 1, neutral location on a Sunday night. And last season, heading into the matchup, it was LSU and Florida State, 2 good teams, not really expected to be major contenders in 2022, but turns out both teams were 2 of the top 15 teams in the country last year. And now heading into 2023, it couldn't be more different. You got 2 teams that are expected to be big contenders in 2023, and it is expected to be a huge matchup. Definitely the biggest game of week 1, if you ask me. And so it's in Orlando, a huge game. That one's going to be one to keep an eye on. Southern Miss then the next week for Florida State. Then you have 2 road games to Boston College and then to Clemson. 2 massive games in September here for Florida State. That Clemson one, I mentioned how my big 3 in the ACC I think will be Clemson, Florida State, and then North Carolina. You're facing Clemson in week 4 on the road. That's going to be a huge one there. Then you've got a bye week and then Virginia Tech at home, Syracuse at home, Duke at home, and then a road trip to Wake Forest. You got Pitt on the road to start November, Miami at home, North Alabama at home, and then Florida on the road to finish out the regular season. So looking at September here, so LSU in week 1, I am going to be taking the Tigers to win that matchup. I just think, I mean, both teams have got outstanding return production. You look at Florida State, LSU, both teams, all signs point to both teams being great in 2023. But LSU with Jaden Daniels, that offense is just, they're going to be stacked heading into 2023. Some of the transfers they're bringing in, defensive, I do think LSU and Florida State are on the same level. But I do think LSU's offense, I do like a bit better than Florida State's, and because of that, I'm going to take LSU right now, but it is a close game that could absolutely go either way. Southern Miss, Boston College, both of those are easy wins, should take care of both teams there. Clemson on the road. Now, this is a game that I also went back and forth on, and I am going to be taking Clemson. I mean, Clemson is a brutal place to win. I mean, they rarely lose at home, and more than likely that could be in a nighttime atmosphere. And I like Clemson to win that game. I think Cade Klubnik is definitely the answer at quarterback. Clemson is also on the rise heading into 2023. Really like that team a lot. I'm going to take Clemson to win that game as well. So kind of a bumpy start to the season with a 2-2 record. Some of you guys might be disappointed in this because I've been praising Florida State this entire video. But October rolls around, and I think this team is dominant. They beat Virginia Tech in a closer game, just coming off of a 2-2 start. But I think this team catches some fire. They beat Syracuse by 3 or 4 touchdowns. They beat Duke in dominant fashion as well. Duke could be decent. Wake Forest on the road. I do think Wake Forest falls off a bit, but still a road game. I think you win that one in dominant fashion as well. So I see you going 4-0 in October, and you're going to be red hot heading into November, where you got Pitt on the road, and I do think you beat Pitt in a closer game because it's mainly on the road, but I do think you beat the Panthers there. Miami, now the Hurricanes, kind of a dark horse team. I could see them being pretty good, but the Hurricanes disappointed quite a bit last season, so I'm not putting their expectations super high, but you got them at home. I think you beat Miami there, which would be a solid win as well. Then North Alabama, you take care of them. And then Florida on the road. This one does concern me a bit because it is on the road. Gainesville, a tough place to play. So I do think it's a close game, but you pull out the win against Florida in the end. So November is somewhat of a challenging month between Pitt, Miami, and Florida, but I do think you win all 3 of those games. And this team, they start out the season 2-2, maybe a disappointing start for Florida State, but I think this team catches fire in the middle part of the season. They finish out the season 10-2 overall. I think this would be solid for them. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below on Florida State, and I appreciate you guys all watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. I'll catch you on the next one.